What people don't realize is that as early as the 50s, Martin talked about his death in the struggle. And he continued to say that, and Kennedy was killed. He said, that's exactly what's going to happen to me.
Something can happen. There are many sick people in our society, and people who are corroded with hatred, and they will use violence, and they will assassinate leaders of the movement.
From the Lorraine Motel, welcome to Journeys. I'm Brenda Wood. Martin Luther King Jr. once told a friend he wouldn't live to be 40. He died at age 39, gunned down here at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. It was a violent end to one man's journey. Now, 30 years later, on this special edition of Journeys, we are remembering Dr. King. Tonight,
there was a sense that something bad would happen.
Hear from those who were closest to Dr. King in his final moments.
It was so nightmarish. I'm still trying to wake up.
Tonight, James Earl Ray says he didn't kill King. Now he's pleading his case on the internet. Will it matter?
I really don't know. I think it's going to go to the grave, the real story.
Tonight, find out the King connection behind this historic home run. Tonight, remembering Dr. King. We begin here on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. 30 years ago, April 4th, 1968, frantic people pointed that way. That's where they heard the shot. Martin Luther King Jr. lay dying on this balcony from a massive head wound. The night of April 4th, 1968, this balcony was guarded by Memphis police. And in the days that followed, mourners filled the courtyard of the Lorraine Motel. A wreath was placed by Dr. King's door. That wreath has since been replaced by a larger one that hangs from the balcony railing. A sad marker. It's been 30 years, and tonight we use that yardstick of time to reflect on what's past and what lies ahead. We begin with the past, the night of the assassination.
NBC interrupts its regular program schedule to bring you the following special report.
We came out of the room and stood right here.
Martin Luther King Jr. was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee.
And he was leaning over the railing, talking to Jesse.
I said, Dr. King, that was it.
And the impact of the bullet had knocked him from here all the way back into this part of the balcony.
He fell, obviously critically wounded, and was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital in Memphis.
Myself and a reporter went down to the emergency room at St. Joseph Hospital. It was a frenzy.
Memphis tonight is in a state of shock, of disbelief.
The sky just got dark. The sun went away.
I heard of the shooting on television.
And my first thought was that this was a disaster.
I immediately called Mrs. King.
And he said he would come over and go to the airport with me.
We rushed to the airport to try to make the plane.
And we were on our way to the gate. I heard a page, Mayor Allen said, we'll get it at the gate.
I was notified by telephone from Memphis that Dr. King was dead.
I had the difficult task of telling Mrs. King of his death.
And then he said, Mrs. King, what would you like to do? Would you like to go on to Memphis, or would you like to go back home? And I said, I think I want to go back home.
The house started filling up with people. Our babysitter, I recall her being on the telephone in the kitchen, and all of a sudden she just started screaming. And the next thing I knew, she fainted.
I have just conveyed the sympathy of Ms. Johnson, myself, to his widow, Mrs. King.
And then I thought, oh, I've got to tell my kids, how do I do that? Dexter says, Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?
She kept saying, you know, he's gone to sleep.
Yolanda came back to my room and sat on my bed, and she said, "Mommy, should I hate the man who killed my daddy?" And I said, "No, dear, Daddy wouldn't want you to do that." And she said, "Well, I'm just not going to cry. I'm not going to cry because my daddy's not really dead."
And the whole time I'm just crying. Tears are just rolling down my eyes. I mean, rolling down my face.
I just started praying and preparing myself.
This country and every person in it suffered a terrible loss tonight with the assassination of this man. The perpetrator of this deed brings down upon all of us the painful charge that we Americans are prisoners of violence and destruction and death. Chet Huntley, NBC News. Good night.
And to this very day, every time one of those little special bulletins comes on, my heart skips a beat. I don't know if that will ever change, but
2 months before Dr. King's death, he said in a sermon he didn't want a long funeral, and he asked whoever delivered his eulogy not to mention the hundreds of awards he'd won, including the Nobel Peace Prize. But of course, his greatness would be noted at his funeral. How could it not? And today, his accomplishments are remembered at the Lorraine Motel, which is now the National Civil Rights Museum. The original sign remains, but some things have changed at the Lorraine Motel, like the infamous balcony.
And there was so much blood, we could never get the spot up, so I had to cut it out.
Wow. Dr. Martin Luther King, what was
Below
his
the balcony,
purpose?
the Willis family gathers. They've traveled from Texas to Memphis. It's time for the children to learn about Dr. King.
He tried to help the blacks get their rights, such as being able to vote.
Ride the bus as everyone.
For everybody to be one.
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity.
There is more to learn inside, for the Lorraine Motel is now a civil rights museum. 10,000 square feet of dramatic exhibits.
Whoa.
A burned Freedom Riders bus.
If you don't move out of that seat, I'll have you arrested.
A snarly Montgomery bus driver. The cold eyes of concrete stupidity and saintliness at a luncheon counter. The experience is bewildering, amusing, devastating.
How can anybody be that inhumane? This presentation has really kind of taken its toll on me. It really
Linda Adams has traveled from California to have her senses beaten. Nearby, Michael Willis sticks close to his mother. Throughout the tour, King's presence is felt and praised.
A million-man march didn't have nothing on this march right here.
I know that's right.
The tour ends at his hotel room, where people gaze at the bed he once rested on. A bed now empty and rumpled, forever abandoned by a rifle shot. Time stilled, tears flow. And instinctively, fingers point across the way to a boarding house window, just as they did 30 years ago. On the 30th anniversary of the assassination, Dr. King is being remembered in a number of ways, including this new book titled Dear Dr. King. It's a collection of letters written by school children. Originally, it was just a Memphis school project, never meant for publication. But teacher Ann McMillan Harms realized it was something much bigger, especially after one particular letter.
I will never forget the specific letter by a boy named Liam, a first grader, and the last line in his letter said, "God believed in you." And that just let me know right there that we had a book, that a first grader could see that in that way.
Dear Dr. King, you were fair and you knew right from wrong. I'm sorry you were dragged into jail. You cared for people and you were a true person. I'm sorry you got shot. God believed in you. Your friend, Liam.